The wind shifted over Winterfell, with an edge as clean as a whetted blade, slicing through the crenellations and stirring banners that bore a direwolf howling against a field of winter white. Bran Stark felt it first, carried upon threads of ravens, whispers through roots deep beneath the snow-packed yard, and the faintest ache in the magic that keened like a cracked horn. Something at the wall was failing. He rose from the carved weirwood seat that once belonged to his father and blinked, though his eyes no longer served as a boy's did. They served the weirwoods and all that watched through them. The dire wolf's heart beat in his chest, even as the raven's wings beat in his ears. Beneath it all, another heartbeat sounded, slow, thunderous, certain, keeping a rhythm older than the wall itself. Hodor. In the Godswood's frozen hush, Bran felt Harold Hodor's life flicker with a brightness that startled him. Hodor had not perished at the cave's mouth beneath the far north, not under Bran's desperate command to hold the door. The alternate path of time had spared him. He lived now among the kennel masters, mending broken wagons and hoisting feed sacks that two men together could scarcely lift. His speech was still one word, a gentle anthem sung to himself, yet inside him resonated something far greater than a forgotten stable boy's mind. Bran saw it plainly. Wisps of green gold binding the giants, every pulse to the shimmering lattice that laced through the wall. Once, the children of the forest poured the power of earth and sky into that colossal barrier. Their songs lingered, but they were faltering. Cracks spider-webbed through ice and spell alike. A breach would come, and with it, the ruin of realms. The visions made Bran tremble. Legions out of frozen night, sunless winters stretching forever, the hush of graves filled with the living dead. Yet the same tangle of roots and runes offered salvation. One man, one name echoing in a single word, could bind all loose threads, could become the keystone the wall had always waited for. Bran sent ravens in dream to summon those he trusted. Arya came first, silent as snowfall. Her eyes held the winter skies, bright and hard. Jon Snow rode from Castle Black with ghost padding beneath the gate shadows, every step a memory of the wall's failing strength. Even Sansa left matters of grain and lords and petty feuds, arriving in a cloak the color of embers, for she knew fear when she scented it on the wind. They met in the great hall where their father's faded voice still seemed to linger. Bran spoke to them of magic and duty, of a wall that must be renewed or the world would shatter. Jon listened, arms folded across a breastplate scratched by too many wars. "I have patched cracks in that wall with stone and tar," he said, "but I cannot mend magic." "You need not," Bran replied. "Magic made it. Magic will make it whole. And magic resides in Hodor." The name stilled the hall. Arya's gaze flicked toward the kennel yards, as though she had already heard the heavy breathing of the gentle giant. Sansa's lips parted. Jon frowned. "The man saved your life, Bran, and nearly lost his own. Are you certain you would risk him again?" Bran's answer was as heavy as the raven-winged certainty that perched upon his shoulders. "Risk him, and all of us live. Spare him, and we all die." They spoke no more of refusal. At dawn they found Hodor beneath the archway of the stables, mending a wagon wheel with blows of an iron mallet that rang like distant bells. He turned to them, broad face flushed with effort, eyes wide and trusting. "Hodor," he rumbled. The sound thrummed through the courtyard stone. Bran felt the wall answer, a faint hum along the world's backbone. Jon laid a hand on the giant's forearm, smaller than a child's against a tree trunk. "Hodor, we need you to come with us," he said. "To the wall." "Hodor." The question hung in the frosted air, gentle and perplexed. "Yes," Bran whispered. "The wall. To save everyone." Hodor's eyes softened. Somewhere behind the simple regard stirred a greater knowing that could not find words. But the magic inside him understood. He nodded, a single dip of that mountain-broad head, and the wheel's rim slipped from his fingers to clatter upon snow. Preparations were swift. Davos Seaworth saw them provisioned. Salt fish, oat cakes, barrels of pickled beets, and Tormund Giantsbane joined with a roar of laughter, declaring that sealing the bloody wall sounded like a good jest to him. Gendry hammered rivets into a new bronze-bound door frame they would haul north. It was no mere barrier of wood and iron, but a conduit of runes carved after sketches Bran sketched, in trance dreams, circles within circles, enfolding a trunk-like matrix, shaped to Hodor's shoulders. It would span an ancient breach beneath the Nightford long covered by rubble, yet still draining the wall's magic with each season's thaw. They rode beneath skies swirling with ghost-gray clouds, a column of 90 souls threading through the wolfswood. Wolves padded along their flanks. Ghost led the pack. Hodor walked beside the supply wagons rather than burden a horse, his strides long and unhurried. When night fell, they camped amid snow-pinned pines, whose needles glittered with frost. Bran sat near Hodor at each fire, guiding him into dreams. In those green-lit halls of memory, Bran saw the children chiseling ice with obsidian blades, chanting in lilting tongues while giants stood sentinel. He saw one giant kneel at the heart of the forming wall, hands pressed to a stone that glowed like moonlit milk. The giant's spirit fused with the woven spells, became pillar, hinge, and lock. When the wall rose at last, the giant's body had turned to crystal ice, but its soul flared through the fortress like a heartbeat. And that soul's echo pulsed now in Hodor. The revelation twisted Bran with guilt. It explained the broken mind that could utter only one word. Carrying such magic had fractured him. Yet Hodor endured as kindly as summer itself. Bran resolved that, whatever sacrifice was asked, Hodor would know choice and honor. At Eastwatch by the sea, watchers on the battlements hailed Jon Snow's party with horn blasts. The sea lay iron dark, its waves slamming the frozen shore. Word of ghostly figures glimpsed beyond the Frostfangs had reached the eastern castles. Fear coiled in every sentry's stance. Hodor's arrival drew wide-eyed stares, but when he smiled, Hodor, men found themselves smiling back despite the dread. They marched west along the wall's shadow until towers spiked against a blood-red sunset. Ghost trotted ahead. The direwolf's ears lay flat, scenting wrongness. The Nightfort loomed, ancient, abandoned save for mice and memories of monstrous deeds. Within its yards, the wind sang through cracks in the ice like cold flutes. Bran felt the breach beneath them, a hollow fang gnawing at the spellwork. They cleared centuries of rubble by torch glow, muscles straining, pulleys groaning. When the gap yawned at last, an archway dripping with meltwater that steamed in the frigid air, Bran felt power fall away from him like sheared wool. The wall above shivered. Jon caught a trickle of ice dust upon his mailed shoulder and swore. They hauled Gendry's bronze frame into place. Runes glimmered faintly, thirsting for life. Bran knelt in the snow. It must be him, he said. He must stand inside it and become the door. He must hold. Menderwanisi. Hodor gazed down at him, vast and gentle, then stepped forward. No one's forcing you, Arya told him, voice low. The blade of needle winked at her hip, though she had not drawn it. Hodor, he murmured. The single word sounded resolute. He ducked, shoulders scraping bronze, and took his place within the ringed lattice. The metal clicked into grooves about his torso, locking him upright. Bran climbed the frame's outer struts until his palm could press to Hodor's brow. Snowflakes melted upon that warm skin. Bran delved. He sank into currents older than kings, green and white, swirling with memories of giant songs and children's laughter, dragonfire and the hush of falling snows. At the core, he found Hodor. The boy who had been called Wireless, bright with curiosity, then shattered by the echo of future commands. Bran reached out, not to wound but to weave. Your strength has always been yours, Bran said inside the dreamlight. But the wall needs more. Will you lend it? Hodor answered not with words but by pouring his essence outward like honey, warmed by fire. Magic flooded the bronze. Runes flared white, then gold, then a deep cerulean that pulsed in time with Hodor's heart. Outside, gusts screamed as if in protest. Ice cracked along the breach's edges, then fused again. Southerly winds halted, as though an unseen hand pressed flat against them. Snow fell upward in a spiral column before settling in utter stillness. The wall breathed, once, an enormous sigh, and quiet settled as profound as the crypts beneath Winterfell. Jon stepped forward. Is it done? His whisper echoed. Bran opened his eyes. Frost rimed his lashes. It is sealed. As long as he stands and breathes, no shadow of the north can pass. Bah! Sansa wept then, one hand to her mouth. Arya bowed her head as though before a weirwood. Tormund muttered a prayer to gods who drank only mead in marrow. Hodor, within the frame, smiled, eyes shining with unshed tears, and said softly, "Hodor." The sound resonated through the wall for leagues. Somewhere in the far dark, the Night King paused, icy crown glinting, and felt a door slam shut between realms. But peace had a price. The frame needed anchoring roots, living weirwood grown anew. Bran and Meera knelt atop the frozen soil, planting seeds soaked in children's tears and giants' blood and the sap of white trees. Bran coaxed the seeds with songs learned in visions. Roots sprouted, twisted, and climbed until pale tendrils wrapped the bronze, fusing man, metal and wood into one holy mechanism. Days passed as they worked. Hodor did not falter. He spoke sometimes, humming his name, content. He ate bread and salt beef placed upon a shelf at his chest, drank snowmelt dripping from the bronze collar. Ravens perched on his shoulders as though he were a statue. Yet in the hush of night, Bran felt the strain. Every heartbeat wove tight cords around Hodor's soul. The keystone accepted him, but consumed him also. When the work was finished, Bran gathered his siblings at the foot of the new-grown weirwood, its bark pale as milk glass, leaves red as fresh wounds. Jon's armor was rimed with salt ice. Arya's cheeks glowed with windburn. Sansa's hair clung to her furs like copper fire. Bran spoke. "We leave him guardians, provisions, and the ravens. He is at peace here." "Bendawa." Jon's voice broke. "Yet he stands alone." "He stands with every living soul in the realms," Bran answered. "His voice is the wall's voice now." He touched the sapling, and its leaves whispered Hodor's name. Before they departed, each sibling offered him a gift. Jon draped a cloak of black and gray around those vast shoulders, the direwolf sigil gleaming. Arya pressed a carved wooden wolf into his hand. Sansa set a silver pin at the cloak's throat. A blooming winter rose. Bran sealed memory of their love into the weirwood so Hodor would never stand in silence. At last they rode south. Beyond, winter still prowled, but a hush of safety lay upon their breaths. Seasons turned. Wildlings told tales of a gentle giant bound in living wood, whose single word calmed snowstorms and made icicles chime like harps. Rangers measured the wall's thickness and found it growing, layer upon layer of enchanted frost. Above Hodor's watch, the aurora burned brighter, as though the sky itself stitched banners in his honor. Years later, when Bran, the last Greenseer king, walked the wall's battlements in dream, he found Hodor still standing, eyes bright, heart steady. Bran spoke across the weirwood with a voice like wind through leaves. "You have held the world, friend." Hodor's smile spread, and his answer rolled out across a peaceful northern sky, a benediction carried in ravens' wings and wolves' howls, and the hush of children who would never flee the dead. Hodor. His white fur flashed like a storm-tossed wave against the powdery dusk as he loped across the fresh-laid snow, muzzle low, ears flat. Jon Snow trod close behind, the winter wind gnawing at the chapped edges of his lips, each boot print sinking deeper than the last. Night was momentarily calm, too calm, and that troubled him more than shrieking gusts ever could. When Ghost halted beneath an ancient, half-crumbled tower west of Queensgate, Jon saw the dark flecks spattered on the ice, drops of crimson, already crusting in frigid air yet unmistakably human. A grim breath drifted from his mouth. The vapor curled upward and vanished against the wall's immense, glimmering face. The sentinel above called down that the riderless horse had bolted in from the Frostfangs at dawn, saddle empty, reins torn. Jon touched the horse's flank. The beast trembled, half mad with exhaustion, and its nostrils steamed like a forge. He whispered a soothing word, guided it toward warmth, then knelt beside the blood. It glimmered in the dying light, a stark reminder that even sealed walls bled, if only through the people sworn to defend them. He scraped a frozen shard from the ground, pressed it between two mailed fingers, and felt its story unfurl. Fear, flight, cold teeth snapping from the darkness. He didn't need Bran's green dreams to know what stalked the wilderness beyond the ice. 6 years of respite had not erased instincts honed in endless winter. A whistle rang sharp from the battlements. Jon followed the rope ladder up, Ghost scaling the crude timber steps even before his master reached the top. South of the wall, the lands lay quilted in drifts of virgin white. But something moved at the tree line where the sky bled orange behind distant mountains. A thin column of smoke, almost dainty in its ascension, yet out of place against the unsullied snowfields. Jon pressed his gloved fist to his mouth. Someone else was out there, alone or worse, in numbers. If wildlings, why approach through the haunted Frostfang passes? And if raiders, how had they crossed rivers held fast under layers of ice thicker than a castle's curtain wall? He ordered 2 rangers to ready black stallions and ghost-coated cloaks, told the watch to maintain triple torches along the quarter-mile stretch, now patrolled by Hodor's silent vigilance. The giant's figure burned forever behind Jon's eyelids. Shoulders swallowed in budding weirwood roots, head haloed in crimson leaves that never browned, eyes bright as dawn. Jon would not allow that peace to be threatened, not by hungry men, nor specters from stories, nor any conjuring of red priests spinning tales of fire. When his small party rode out through the old Queensgate archway, its stones cleaned, its iron-bound doors reinforced so thoroughly that 3 wains of quarried granite had been ground to dust to seal its seams, Jon's mind drifted to citadel scrolls he had studied with Samwell. They spoke of ley lines crisscrossing Westeros, like invisible rivers of quicksilver, pooling beneath old places of power. Valyria's smoking ruins, the crypt-filled bedrock beneath Winterfell, the weep-scarred face of Dragonstone's Mount. But northern lines ran straight into the wall, gathered by the weirwood lattice Bran had coaxed to life and pinioned in Hodor's mighty heart. If blood had spilled upon those unseen veins, magic might stir in ways no maester's quill could predict. And it had spilled. Jon had felt its echo. The smoke column thickened as they closed the distance, swaying above birches stripped of leaf and lichen. Ghost vanished into underbrush ahead. Jon let him go. He trusted the direwolf's eyes more than his own when colorless twilight blended ground and sky into a monotone quiet enough to drown a man's sense of direction. They found the camp in a shallow dell, a single tattered hide tent, its poles snapped and replaced with crooked saplings. A low fire pit burned dully, feeding on moss and broken arrow shafts. Beside it lay 2 bodies. Jon dismounted, signaled his men to circle wide. The first corpse belonged to a girl, no more than 15 winters. Blue lips parted in surprise, limbs rigid. Her arms had been branded by shackles now broken. Across her stomach, someone had painted spiraled sigils in pig's blood or worse. Beside her, a crow's feather cloak covered the second body. Jon knelt, turned the head gently, and stared into the once kind face of Maester Kurth, posted at Icemark Tower only a fortnight past. His eyes were missing, sockets packed with snow. Jon bowed his head, breathed out slowly. Barroton's maester had sworn Kurth loved sweet plums and pathfinding songs. Yet death had found him songless. Jon rose, scanned the tent, and saw inside a ragged diary page pinned by an obsidian dagger to a cracked wooden chest. He slid it free. Scrawled ink told a tale of a moving hill in the night, something vast that creaked with limbs of ice and bark. A shape that guided Kurth and the girl south, toward the hinge, on a moonless path. The last words bled off into a frantic smear. The hinge. Jon knew that name. Bran used it often in council to describe Hodor's living gate. Something or someone had sought it. He buried the bodies beneath the snow and set the tent ablaze. When flames licked high, Ghost appeared carrying a severed hand, blackened, fingers frozen into a claw. Jon examined the stump. The skin was brittle, the bone porous as if drained. Though years had passed, he had not forgotten the feel of white flesh. He tossed it onto the fire. It hissed and cracked, stinking like rancid oil. Sparks spiraled into the evening. They rode hard for Queensgate, torches held low, resisting the urge to look back each time wind snapped at their cloaks. Behind them, the flicker of that lonely pyre danced at the cusp of vision, until distance smeared it into a pinprick. Then darkness swallowed even that. Winterfell's halls glowed honey-gold under tall candelabras when Sansa Stark strode through, skirts brushing away servants' bows. She found Bran in the solar, hunched above a bowl carved from translucent amber. Pale roots coiled from its rim into water, the color of moonlit milk. Through the window, a gentle rain tapped the shutters. Autumn, though mild, carried a tang of leaf rot. Jon sends word. Sansa's voice barely held steady. A maester dead, and a child lost near the Frostfangs. Someone is hunting Hodor. Bran's pupils glimmered white, unfocused. Not someone, he whispered. Something. My ravens saw it. A golem wrought of ice and ironwood, walking without flame, drawn by the blood that anchors the hinge. Sansa felt chill crawl along her spine. The maester's. The child's? He cut her wrists. The wall's veins carried the offering to its heart. Bran's throat worked dry. Now the old powers know its scent again. Old powers? She asked, though her bones already knew the answer. Stories she once called nursery tales had become law these past years. The ones the children feared, Bran said, and the ones the first men bargained with beneath skies more alien than any we have seen. They slumbered when the Dawn Age gave way to mortal lineages. But magic, real magic, does not die. It waits. He touched the water. Ripples chased one another like silver snakes. I would spare him, sister. But the world rarely spares what it needs. Sansa inhaled, felt air rasp against grief lodged for seasons. We ride tonight, then. He blinked slowly, emerged from the trance like a swimmer breaking a frozen lake skin. No, Dot. We war tonight. And wars are seldom won by single charges into dark woods. We need alliances that existed only in songs. Bran rolled his chair to a stack of scrolls. Some speak of deep places beneath Isle of Faces where pact marks yet glow. Others mention the Valyrian echoes buried below Dragonmont. Threads wind everywhere. If we reinforce them, the hinge can bear more strain. Sansa placed a hand upon his arm. Then let us weave a net from every thread. Jon must hold the north, Bran said, as though confessing a sin. Arya must guard the hinge in person. And you, my sister, must cross half the realm to treat with lords who distrust every Stark summons. I will walk roads only a greenseer can. Da. She squeezed harder. We have done the impossible once already. Her eyes glinted like tempered copper. We'll do it again. Step by step, Arya Stark climbed the rope ladder into the Night Fort's central tower. The torch in her left hand cast cruel shapes, the sword in her right, needle no longer, but a slender bravo's blade forged anew at Gendry's smithy, gleamed straight and sure. At the apex of the twisting stair, ironwood planks formed a shaky deck that connected to Hodor's sanctuary by a narrow, root-enfolded bridge. Ravens roosted along the balustrade, beaks glistening in candlelight. They croaked her name in many voices. Some she recognized: Old Nan, Maester Luwin, Syrio Forel. She ignored them, heart steady, and stepped onto the bridge. Hodor towered at its end, fused to the bronze frame now wholly claimed by ivory bark. Moonlight poured through slats overhead, glazing him in pale fire. Snowflakes drifted around, yet none settled upon his shoulders. The weirwood leaves shed warmth unnatural to the Night Fort's gloom. His mouth lifted in a soft smile when he saw her. Hodor, he spoke, the single word heavier than any oath. She said softly. Hodor indeed. She offered a skin of warm broth. He drank. The weirwood roots pulsed faintly, drawing sustenance from the meal as surely as Hodor did. She noticed lines of strain around his eyes, new since her last vigil. Magic stirring, Arya murmured, scanning the lattice for cracks. She found only smooth bark, yet under her gloved palm, the wood thrummed like a distant smith's hammer. She recalled long nights in Bravos listening to Forge's ring. This rhythm was slower, but stronger. She felt her heartbeat answer it. A raven fluttered to her shoulder, croaking, "Cold comes, cold comes." Arya exhaled. "Let it come," she whispered. Then, more firmly, "Let it come." She would answer steel with steel, sorcery with blood and will. The hinge would hold, and she along with it. The summons reached Old Town on a brisk winter morning, carried by a fleet-winged raven whose inky feathers bore flecks of frost. Archmaester Ambrose trimmed the cipher's knots with precise snips, peered once, and swallowed hard. "It appears I am expected in Winterfell," he said, voice trembling between outrage and awe. A dozen lesser maesters erupted in protest. Archmaesters did not simply abandon the Hightower for northern fables. Yet Ambrose waved them silent. He was a man of letters, true, but also a man whose youth had burned with visions of hidden truths. "When knowledge knocks," he said, "we open the door." Within days he boarded a cog under Citadel charter. Crates of lead-wrapped tomes were stowed beside casks of candle wax and copper mirrors, ground to occult specifications. A septon blessed the voyage. Ambrose blessed it again in the secret tongue of old Volantis. The ship tacked up the Sunset Sea, then cut east along the Fingers, braving storms that bruised the horizon like spilled ink. At White Harbor, Lord Manderley himself provided a 12-horse escort. Word had traveled. The realm's last bulwark required every scrap of lore. Ambrose reached Winterfell during a gentle snowfall. Bran greeted him in the courtyard, one hand lifted in solemn gratitude, the other resting upon the direwolf Summer's grown progeny, great shaggy beasts with gold eyes that watched every stranger as though weighing souls. That night in the library's echoing vault, Ambrose unwrapped scrolls so brittle they broke into dust at a breath. Using copper mirrors and candles, he projected pale light through ragged glyphs onto vaulted stone, enlarging runes older than runes. Bran read while breath steamed in the chill. Symbols of latticework twined around a figure crowned by antlers of living crystal. Giant, rooted, glorious. Beside it another figure stood cloaked in shade, fingertips dripping iron shavings. "The smith who forged night's first chain," Bran whispered. "He betrayed the interweave, promising the darkness a key." Ambrose nodded grimly. The chain was broken, but the design lingers, yearning to be remade. Together they mapped nodes of power. Winterfell's crypts, Casterly Rock's glitterstone caverns, the heat-cracked belly of Dragonstone. Each site mirrored, in miniature, the wall's new hinge, rings within rings, able to catch the world's breath and sing it back as living strength. But forging such lines requires living anchors, Ambrose warned, or the pattern collapses. Bran's knuckles whitened on the wheel of his chair. Living anchors meant sacrifice, souls bound to myth, as Hodor's was. Yet there might be other ways. The children once used heart trees to channel forces without surrendering life entire. He decided they would need to wake those trees again. Far to the east, atop the jagged caldera of Dragonstone, flames painted the blackened sky like banners of war. Daenerys Stormborn, queen by right of conquest, though conquest had grown a weary crown, walked the stone bridge between collapsed towers, the surf's thunder echoing in her bones. Drogon circled overhead, wings beating the sulphurous updrafts. Neither queen nor dragon had taken a meal in days. Portents weighed heavier than hunger. A raven from Bran Stark found her amid the ash-swirled courtyard where melted gargoyles jutted like broken talons. It perched upon a toppled throne of basalt and cawed thrice. Its eyes burned unnatural white. Daenerys read the parchment, felt its words crackle with the same strange heat she had sensed all winter. "The hinge bears the wall. We must forge others. Dragonstone's fires wait. Bend flame to life once more." It was signed with Bran's wax seal. Yet below, in ink almost too pale to see, another name surfaced. Hodor. She traced the letters, mouth forming the gentle giant's name. Joan's tales of the man had softened her heart across distances of war and grief. She looked up at Drogon, whose pupils narrowed like twin knives. A low rumble issued from his throat, approval or warning, She could not tell. Firebound she had always been. Perhaps now she would bind fire to ice in ways no Targaryen dreamt. She summoned her smiths, ordered forges relit. Veins of dragonglass reopened. If Bran Stark asked a dragon queen to weave a net of living flame to hold against night, she would weave it, though scale and bone be the lose tax. Under relentless gray skies north of Queensgate, Jon watched new patrols drill. Wildlings, free folk children of Tormund's clan, sworn brothers fresh made, and a scattering of southern volunteers compelled by vows to the Seven or to the Starks. They practiced spear thrusts, drilled torch formations, learned to read the wind for silent warnings. Shivers in the air where nothing moved. Frost halos around breath too cold for living lungs. Word of the maester's murder had sharpened every oath. Even the wall's ghostly echoes grew wary. Jon could feel its pulse accelerate each night he climbed the switchback stairs to stand beside Hodor's distant silhouette. One dawn trumpets blared. 3 toot blasts. The old signal for rangers returning. Jon strode to the gate and saw Corran's nephew, Hallis Reed, dragging a sled piled with broken chains of fresh-forged ironwood. On each link, runes smoldered, carved by something that left scarred edges smooth as polished bone. "We found these at the edge of the scarp," Hallis gasped. No tracks, no prints. Just the chains and these. He opened a satchel. Inside lay a dozen hearts, perfectly preserved, each stabbed with a sliver of frozen emerald. That night Bran's voice arrived through the ravens, heavy with resolve. "The Smith of Night is reforging his chain," he said. "We have little time." With Ambrose's map spread between candelabras, Bran addressed the lords gathered in Winterfell's hall. Cragan Karstark, tall as a spear. Lady Lyanna Mormont, fierce as the island's storms. The sullen Sir Ferrus of House Dreadfort, and Lady Barbary Dustin, silver hair falling upon sable shoulders. Sansa presided, yet ceded the floor as Bran's voice carried soft but undeniable. "We cannot hold the wall at one point alone," he said. "We must create mirrors." Smaller hinges that brace it like ribs against the world. For each, we require a weirwood sapling daring enough to drink from roots of fire, ice, and blood. He gestured. Servants rolled forward 3 great stone troughs. One filled with ashes of dragon bones sent by Daenerys, another with ice chips taken from the highest reach of the wall, and a third with black rich soil from Winterfell's godswood. Bran produced seeds, white as milk glass, cupped in velvet. These we set it in each mixture, then bear them to the chosen sites, watered by a drop of Stark blood, and guarded by those who volunteer their life force to guide them. He met each lord's gaze. "I will guide one, Jon Snow another, the third." He paused. Must be a heart unbroken by war yet unafraid of shadows. Eyes turned to Arya as she entered. She sheathed her blade noiselessly, stepping into the ring of dim light. "I'll do it," she said without flourish. Silence fell like snow upon the hall, only to be broken by a single, staggering intake of breath. Lady Barbary Dustin's, perhaps, or Cragan's. Bran could not tell. But none voiced dissent. Rain lashed the decks of the sea swift as it knifed through black-capped waves on its journey to Dragonstone. Jon stood at the prow, hair whipping across his eyes. Ghost crouched at his side, bristling against the salt spray. Beside him, Ambrose clutched a locked coffer containing the ash-soaked seed and the hard-won ironwood chains they would recast into protective runes. His thin frame shivered inside wool robes. Too many nights under Maester vaults had not prepared him for a sea born of storms. White sails emerged from the mist, Targaryen crimson sigils flapping wild. Drogon banked overhead, roaring at thunderclouds. Bronn's belly catching stray lightning. Daenerys awaited them on the high tor, a dark silhouette wrapped in a cloak of black scales. Their greeting was curt, yet warm. 2 rulers carved by war, still searching for healing. That night, they met with Bran through flame-rimmed glass candles Daenerys insisted were lit for the first time in centuries. Bran's phantom voice guided them. Embed the sapling within Dragonmont's heart chamber. Bathe it in molten rock, cooled by shadow glass. bind it with chains hammered by dragons, and swear guardianship with blood, both Valyrian and Stark. Jon and Daenerys descended into tunnels glowing orange, sulfur choking their throats. Jon carried the seed nestled in iron tongs. Daenerys guided him past rivers of lava spitting embers like dying stars. At the chamber's core, they found a natural anvil, a slab veined with obsidian. Drogon coiled around the cavern's edge, eyes reflecting magma rivers. Daenerys slashed her palm with a dragonglass shard. Jon did the same with Valyrian steel. Their mingled blood dripped onto the slab. Jon pressed the seed into it. Daenerys laid the ironwood chains around like protective serpents. Drogon exhaled a slow stream of fire, green, impossibly green. When the flames receded, the seed glowed, roots unfurling into cracks that drank magma as if it were morning dew. The ironwood links fused into a circlet, binding root to rock. Jon staggered, feeling his pulse pull outward, as though the tree already reached into him. Daenerys caught his wrist. He found her eyes unafraid. Sorrowful, yes, but blazing with purpose. "If we must stand here the rest of our lives," she said, "we shall, but the wall will not fall." In the Vale of Arryn, Arya scaled the eerie sky, unforgiving path beside Gendry, who carried the ice-soaked sapling on his back. Wing-stiff falcons circled overhead. At the summit, sweet Shara Waynwood waited with steel-eyed conviction, having sworn her knights to defend whatever strange ritual might come. They planted the seed in the Moon Door's shattered remains, an opening once reserved for traitors' falls, now repurposed for salvation. Arya pricked her thumb, let blood patter onto frost-rimmed stone, and felt the eerie quake. Roots shot downward, gouging mountain marrow. Branches sprouted through cracks, unfurling white leaves that fluttered against the star-brittle night. Though moonlight bathed her in pale glow, Arya sensed darkness linger at edges of her vision. A figure forged of glassy ice and thorny ironwood hunting, always hunting, the new hinge. She swore she would meet it with steel. Bran's own seed, he planted within the crypts of Winterfell, deep among direwolf statues and long-dead kings. He guided his chair through narrow tunnels until he reached Lyanna Stark's tomb. Beneath her stone effigy lay echoes of vows and songs. Here he cut his palm, let blood fall onto cold floor, pressed the seed into dust that smelled of old bones and rose petals. Roots seized the chamber, curling around spear tips, broken crowns, and the sword lying across Lyanna's lap. Bran felt them weave into his nerves, until human and tree and stone fused in quiet exhilaration. He breathed in, then out, and felt the same exhalation mimic him far away in Dragonmon's magma catacombs, and again high atop the Eyrie beneath thin sky. 3 hinges now, ringing the realm like new moons in orbit of the Great Wall. But the Smith of Night was never idle. Beneath shattered castles north of the Skirling Pass, it gathered splinters of ironwood, bones of giants, shards of mirror-frost ice that never thawed. It forged limb after limb, chain after chain, each link thrumming with stolen marrow from sacrificed wanderers lured by whispered dreams. It shaped a jaw of obsidian, eyes of dying starlight. Then it marched its creation south, one thunderous stride at a time. Hodor felt it first. A tremor, small yet sharp, pulsing through bark and bone. His mouth shaped Hodor in warning. Arya heard, though miles distant atop the Nightfort's highest walkway. She alerted Jon through ravens flung like black arrows. Bran sensed the tremor in Winterfell's crypt, the sapling at his back shuddering. Daenerys felt it in her skull. Jon, in the ironwood circlet fused to Dragonmon's chamber. They knew. The enemy was coming not to break the wall, but to pry away the locks one by one. Battle opened in sleet so thick it ground the horizon to paste. Jon rode at the head of 400 mounted spears, southern banners flapping beside rough-spun, free folk hides. Steel tipped in dragonglass gleamed beneath lanterns. Ghost prowled the column's edge. Above, Drogon and Rhaegal, grown wild, but still answering Daenerys' call, raked the sky with roars that shook sleet into streamers. The golem emerged beyond the milkwater of the gorge, a mountain of fused wood and ice glistening like moonlit armor. Chains draped from its shoulders, dragging sparks as they scraped boulders. In its right hand it bore a hammer whose head was carved from a black meteorite streaked with veins of red crystal. In its left, it carried a wheel of carved rune iron, half complete, half empty spokes craving more links. Daenerys descended astride Drogon, wings folding as they landed upon a basalt outcrop. Her silver hair snapped like a war banner. Jon signaled torch archers. Flames hissed into life. The golem's head turned. Eyes, molten ice, narrowed. It stomped forward, each step shaking the ground. Rangers loosed quarrels. Arrows struck, black tips burying deep, but shafts froze and shattered as the creature flexed. It raised the meteor hammer. A crack of thunder exploded as it smashed a glacial ridge, sending shards sifting through ranks. Men fell, torsos split asunder. Jon drove his destrier forward, Valyrian steel longclaw drawn like a sliver of stormlight. At the moment blade met ankle thick as a tower timber. The golem's chain wheeled around and whipped the horse aside, hurling beast and rider into snow churned red. Jon rolled free, ribs screaming. He leapt to his feet, sword raised. High above, Drogon screamed. Searing flame engulfed the golem's back. But the creature twisted, hammered the fire aside, ice plating hissing but unbroken. Rhaegal swept in next, talons ripping free a spray of ironwood splinters. Yet each wound refroze in seconds, sealing with unnatural speed. Daenerys' voice soared across the din. The chains! They bind its power. Then, Jon saw. Runes glowed along each link, absorbing dragonfire, channeling it back into crackling arcs that healed the golem. They would never slay the monster through brute might. They must break its bindings. He sprinted, ducking beneath a glacial spike hurled by the creature, and reached a chain dragging behind. With a single two-handed stroke, he severed a link. Sparks flew. A shriek ripped through the battlefield, half iron groan, half wind howl. The golem staggered. Jon hacked again, cutting the chain free. Ice plates dulled, cracks spread across its torso in webbed fractures. Others saw and followed. Tormund's roaring wildlings swung axes at trailing links. Night's Watch archers fired dragon glass bolts at glowing runes. Each shattered link dimmed the creature's aura. With every break, Jon felt a tug through the circlet on his brow. Dragonmon's hinge, drawing energy from the freed magic. He focused, grounding it like a lightning rod, channeling it into flame that wreathed the sword in his grasp. Arya arrived then, leaping down from the golem's own shoulder, after scaling its back like a spider. She had stowed away atop Rhaegal's flight. Needle-thin blade burned with empty starlight as she plunged it into the gap where two plates met. She pried, twisting. Ice popped, shards raining. The creature swung its meteor hammer, but too late. She vaulted off, leaving a wound that refused to close. Drogon dove, his fire poured into the fissure. The golem's chest cavity glowed orange, then white, then ruptured in a cascade of molten ice and steel. Chains unraveled like dead serpents. It bellowed, head tilting skyward, guttural roar sagging into silence. The hammer fell, sinking half its weight into snow that flashed to steam. But in the dying hush, a core remained. Shard of mirror ice encasing a single still-beating heart carved from weirwood. It throbbed once, sending a spear of frost racing toward Arya. Ghost lunged, knocking her clear. The spear pierced the direwolf's flank. Ghost yelped, but kept his feet. Jon hurled Longclaw, the steel buried to the hilt in the crystalline heart. When he wrenched the blade free, the heart cracked, spilled powdered ice, and crumbled. The battle was over before the echoes died. Jon fell to one knee beside Ghost, pressing cloth to the wound. The wolf's breathing was steady. The spear had shattered without piercing deep. Relief flooded him. Daenerys touched down nearby, eyes searching Jon's face. They shared a look. Grief for the dead, triumph for the living, deeper understanding forged in flame and frost. 3 nights later, Bran joined them at the night fort, through dream-walking first, then in body borne by sled. The weirwood roots entwining Hodor glowed steady. No longer did strain line his face. He had felt every crash of chain, every flare of dragonfire, yet stood unwavering. Bran laid a hand to the bark. He nodded, tears catching on lashes. "We're not finished," he said softly. "But the chainsmith is dead, and the hinges whole." In the courtyard below, survivors erected pyres for the fallen. Snowflakes drifted among sparks. For once the wind smelled of pine rather than ash. Jon, Arya, Sansa, Daenerys, and Bran gathered before Hodor's bridge. "You have borne the world," Jon told Hodor, voice thick. "And the world repaid your kindness." "Hodor," came the answer. Peaceful, resonant, infinite. Branches rustled overhead like applause. Sansa stepped forward, unfolded a silk banner embroidered with a white tree and an open door beneath it. She affixed it to the balustrade, where it fluttered, stark against the night sky. "So all the realm will remember," she said. Bran's gaze swept over his family. Roots pulsed beneath his hands, connecting Winterfell's crypt, the Ares Peak, Dragonmon's heart, and Hodor's living gate. A net of magic thrummed brilliantly, alive with memory and sacrifice, yet anchored in hope. He felt new buds forming, new songs weaving into the world's lattice. Free folk children learning to read under stewards of Castle Black, maesters copying scrolls of dragon seed and green lore side by side, smiths forging ironwood glass blades, not for war but for harvesting ice grapes, now blossoming along once barren ridges. "Perhaps now," Bran whispered, "we build rather than bleed." Daenerys' lips curved. "If dragons can grow gardens upon volcanoes, anything is possible." Jon touched the iron circlet fused to his brow. It pulsed warm, no longer a chain but a living ring. Arya spun her blade, sheathing it with practiced grace, a promise that swords could rest when duty allowed. They stood as dawn colored horizon with rose and gold, the wall's massive face reflecting sunrise in hues unseen. Since old Nan's oldest tales. For the first time, the light seemed to shine outward, not just upon them but through them, through Hodor, through every seed and root anchored across the realm. And Bran knew the world would remember this dawn, not for wars ended, but for doors held open by hearts too large to be measured, by silent words that thundered louder than armies, and by hope grafted into the bones of giants. "Hodor," Bran murmured, and ravens carried the word on sun-bright wings across a sky no longer ruled by frost and fear, but by the fragile, enduring courage of those who chose to stand and hold. A hush lingered over the night fort, long after sunrise, as though the vast stones themselves had paused, midway between breath and sigh, unsure whether to exhale relief or brace for terror's return. Jon Snow felt the pause inside him, a hollow kept open by memory of ringing steel and shattering ice. Each dawn since the battle he tried to close that hollow, yet through every patrol, every council, every solemn funeral pyre, it remained, a silent keepsake of fragility. He stood now upon the highest parapet with Ghost sprawled at his boots, the direwolf's bandaged flank rising and falling in a slow, healing rhythm. Far below, new masons clambered along scaffolds, trimming shattered merlons and rechinking mortared seams. Tormund barked curses at them one moment, sang bawdy encouragement the next. The man thrived on motion. Even grief dented him only long enough for another grin to iron itself in place. Jon studied the horizon where the wall curved eastward, until sun glare erased it in a haze of silver. Beyond that glare Bran's sapling pulsed beneath Winterfell's crypts. Arya's breathed thin air above the eyrie, and the one he and Daenerys had anchored writhed in Dragonmon's heart, like a white root coiled around molten blood. He could feel them, a thrumming chord just under his sternum. Neither pain nor pleasure, simply there, as integral now as spine or memory. Boots echoed on stairstone. Sansa emerged, red gold hair bright against furs the color of fresh rust. Her smile was small. Larger ones felt extravagant in these halls of mourning. She extended a leather tube sealed with the wax crescent of White Harbor. "Wyman reports new ships arriving daily," she said. Most bring grain and timber, but 3 last week carried strangers, some from Pentos, some claiming to be Lorathi stonemasons. They cite trade, yet ask constant questions about the wall's hinges. I placed them under watch. John unrolled the parchment, scanning the heavy Manderley script. I'll move extra spears to the harbor. You cannot shield every plank and pier. Sansa replied. Instead, we teach allies what the hinges mean. Secrecy invites thieves. Nandero. John folded the letter. Some truths still kill when spoken, or save when shared. She rested gloved fingers on his wrist. You bear too much weight alone. His gaze returned to the horizon. There lay the cost of solitude, and its necessity. He had no answer she would accept, so he chose none. Ghost's ears flicked. A raven spiraled down, landing on Sansa's shoulder. Its eyes shone milky. Bran's far voice poured forth, rasping with urgency barely masked by his deliberate calm. Ships at Eastwatch, Bran said through the bird. 5-masted Leviathan. Black sails embroidered with a crescent moon entangled by thorn branches. No banners known to maesters. Holds bristle with sellswords and alchemists. They offer alliance in exchange for a branch of the hinge. Now. The raven shuddered, then cawed once and flew. Sansa gripped the parapet. They must not leave with so much as a splinter. They will not, John said. Eastwatch by the sea smelled of salt, tar, and caution. When Daenerys dismounted from Drogon's neck, scales beneath her palms cooling from flight. Harbor piers creaked under crates of dried cod and barrels of hardshore wine, stacked to woo garrison purses. Yet all eyes fixed on the Leviathan moored beyond the breakers. Its black hull rose higher than Eastwatch's lighthouse. Here and there robed figures appeared on the rail, their cuffs stitched with queer glyphs that writhed when stared at too long. John greeted her on the dunes, dark cloak whipping toward the water like a captured banner longing for escape. Bran's birds cried alarm. I heard them on the wing, she replied. They shared the briefest press of foreheads, habit born of nightly council fires, and turned together toward the dock where the visitor's longboat cut through foam. The first to step ashore was a woman garbed head to toe in silver-threaded silk. Her eyes were membrane pale, irises lost in pupils too large. Behind her came 2 alchemists clad in lacquered leather aprons, glass goggles flashing green. 6 soldiers followed, helms wrought in the likeness of wolf skulls. I am Lady Lythancora, the woman announced, voice smooth as poured wax. Envoy of the Thistle Moon. We come to trade knowledge for life. Benno. Joan's brows nodded. Life needs no barter. Speak plainly. Lythane's lip curled with amusement. Plain words for plain minds. Very well. We heard of your icebound hinge, a wonder binding realms. Our masters ask only a finger length of its root. In return, we offer secrets to mend any flesh. Daenerys regarded her. No flesh stands wounded here that nature will not heal. History abounds with deeper wounds. Lythane raised a gloved hand. One alchemist opened a brass coffer. Inside writhed something not alive, yet not dead. A pale worm knotted around itself, but never closing. Essence of Nissaros, she said. Distilled from Moonsinger ichor, taught to knit bone overnight. John stepped forward. We do not purchase miracles with our soul's foundations. The envoy's eyes narrowed. Stubborn as first men. But even giants' hinges crack. Should misfortune shear your guardian as it sheared legends of old, remember Thistle Moon. She signaled. Her entourage retreated, boards thudding under wolf-helmed boots. Daenerys' glare traced them back to the longboat. If they attempt theft, they'll meet true giants, John finished. While Eastwatch braced, Arya strode among Irie's snowy courtyards, needle-fine blade traded for a falconer's glove. The sapling beside the moon door had thickened, branches lacing into pale lattice across the yawning gap. It drank mountain stars at night, exhaled faint warmth by dawn. She tested each root's tension, feeling whether any shiver betrayed distant malaise. None yet, though sleep brought dreams of ghost foxes shrieking as they gnawed those roots. She woke every morning before sunrise, blade already in hand. "My lady!" Sir Shara Wainwood called, breath white in crystal air. Scouts from the Snakewood report flocks dying mid-flight, their bodies drained of blood. "North or south of the peaks?" "South." Arya's jaw set. If enemies bypass the wall's anchor points, they might assault lesser threads of power, hoping to unravel the bigger weave. She ordered ravens to Bran, then paced before the hinge until roots ceased their restless stirring. That night, a hush deeper than owl wings settled over the eyrie. Arya climbed the watchtower. Clouds crawled beneath, hiding valleys in soot. Moonlight revealed a scatter of sparks along roads far below. Torches of a moving column. Too small for invading army, too ordered for refugees. She loosed a carrier raven westward and kept vigil until dawn peeled the cloud back. Yet the torches had vanished as though snuffed by unseen hand. In Winterfell's crypt, Bran listened to Arya's report echo through Ravencall, while his own heart hammered roots like a smith's anvil. He dismissed Maester Ambrose with a gentle nod. The Archmaester shuffled away, quills and scrolls rattling. Left alone with the sapling, Bran slid into trance. He drifted along pulsing veins, following skeins of light that coiled from Winterfell through bedrock, under rivers, over hills, converging on the wall. Scent of sap and snow swelled. Whispers of ancient song slithered in forgotten tongues. Past the wall the network dimmed, frayed, but its reach extended still across white plains to a place Bran rarely touched. The heart of frost, where once the other's cold throne glistened. There now glowed a sigil new and hungry, a spiral of coins hammered from starlight, each coin bearing a twisted crescent. Thistle moon. Branches cracked in real space. Bran's eyes snapped open. The sapling quivered violently, bark splitting to reveal brief flashes of bluish ichor. He inhaled sharply, pressing both palms flat to the trunk. Images flooded. Rogue maesters dredging sorcery from Valyria's smoking gutters. Necromancers scouring Yee deserts for sky-fallen metal. Chemists pickling children's marrow in quicksilver. They all bowed before that same spiraled coin. The sapling juddered once more, then stilled, as though complicit in a secret. Bran withdrew, breathing hard. He summoned guards to double the crypt watch and sent ravens to every hinge-bearer. At Dragonstone, molten fumes scorched lungs while Jon hammered star iron into sigils under Daenerys' supervision. They reforged shattered pieces of the golem's broken chains into talismans, protective charms for newly raised watchtowers along the wall's length. Sparks hissed in lava-lit gloom. Drogon's shadow enveloped them both, wings curled like a cathedral's vault. When Bran's raven arrived, Jon paused mid-swing, parchment trembling in heat drafts. He read, lips tightening. They target lifeblood outside the hinges now, draining bird flocks, deer herds, perhaps people next, weakening the web. Daenerys set tongs aside, gaze hardening. Where does Bran see them? A place beyond the frost fangs, the shivering sound. Caves old as the first night. He cannot enter them. Says an unlit moon bars his sight. She touched the cooled star iron talisman. Then we light torches. 2 weeks later, an expedition cut east from Castle Black. Jon, Daenerys, Tormund, 50 rangers, 40 free folk hunters, 3 of Ambrose's most audacious scholars, and 2 ivory-skinned deerwolves. Ghost and a younger she-wolf named Shiver, raised from Summer's line. Snow beat at them in heavy sheets, but dragonstone-forged amulets glimmered around each throat, warding the worst chill. Above, Rhaegal and Drogon circled, silhouettes against iron sky. They reached the shivering sound on the 7th dusk. Crags jagged as dragon teeth hemmed a frozen inlet. At its center, an island rose, crowned by a basalt citadel blasted half away yet still crowned with black sails limp in still air. The Thistlemoon vessel re-anchored in secret. Small boats were out of the question on that ice-clogged water. They crossed instead over a skin of frost so perfectly smooth it mirrored the gray heavens, traction gained only by spiked boots. Daenerys led, a torch blazing green, wildfire bound safely within glass. When they stepped onto the island's gravel strand, wind died. Even Drogon's wing beats muffled. A silence of cosmic disrespect ruled, as though the place claimed dominion over sound itself. They found the first corpse near the jetty, a sailor from Eastwatch Patrol, chest caved, face serene as marble. A rune carved on his forehead bled faint silver. Ambrose knelt, inspecting. Blood removed post-mortem, replaced by quicksilver compound, he whispered. A vessel for something. Jon's stomach clenched. We burn him. Tormund doused the body in oil. Flame roared unnatural blue. Sparks rose and vanished into the hush. They advanced between columns of salt-withered rock until a gate loomed, carved in imitation of a yawning mouth. 2 Wolfhelm guards flanked it, motionless. Jon hailed them, no reply. Ghost padded forward, sniffed, growled low. Jon edged nearer. The guard's armor was empty besides pale dust piled inside breastplates. Embry rose at the phenomenon. Daenerys touched his shoulder. Stay close. Beyond the gate, a hall descended steeply. Glowworms in ceiling cracks cast a corpuscular glow over glass pipes affixed to walls, thick as arms, full of churning argent fluid. Within floated objects, severed hands, fish skulls, broken chains, each swirling as though stirred by invisible paddles. What magic is this? Tormund muttered. Alchemy shading toward necromancy, Ambrose said, voice half delighted, half horrified. They feed metal with living essence. At the hall's far end stood Lady Lythene. Robes of silver now fell open, revealing a breastplate grown from her own ribs, bone twisted into armor. She smiled, greeting them like dinner guests. I knew the hinge keepers would seek marvels hidden under my ship's shadow. She stroked a tube where one of Hodor's stray leaves floated, already paling. Ire blazed behind Jon's eyes. You carve our world and expect thanks. Not thanks, recognition. The hinge is hope caged. Any hope worth forging is worth perfecting. She raised both arms. The argent pipe split, fluid rushing out to pool into a single vast mirror-bright disk on the floor. Within its surface, a reflection stirred. A man-shaped void, suffused by starlight coins. Daenerys stepped forward, wildfire torch held high. Release what you stole, then kneel. Lythene's laughter echoed in that soundless hall like blades on bone. Her shadow stretched, tore from her body, and solidified. It rose tall, wearing a wolf skull helm, and Jon understood. The Smith of Night had died, but its blueprints lived, copied by these alchemists, infused with stolen roots and blood. Battle erupted. Tormund charged, axe smashing pipe after pipe, letting shimmering torrents flood the floor. Rangers loosed dragon-glass bolts that screamed into Lythene's armored ribs, shattering shards of bone. The mirrored disk convulsed, birthing malformed limbs of silver. Jon hurled star-iron daggers, each lodged inside the creature's joints, sparking sun-bright flashes, but failing to halt its coalescence. Then Shadow Wolf lunged at Daenerys. Drogon crashed through the entry arch. Stone exploding, flame spewing. The shadow absorbed fire like parchment drinks ink, turning heat into greater mass. It lashed an arm. Black talons ripped across Drogon's muzzle, drawing hiss of pain. Embry shouted incantations, sprinkling dust of crushed rubies across the mirror. Fluid recoiled, forming spikes against him. Jon heard the wall's hinges thrum wild within his bones, searching for purchase. He pressed both palms to the frozen ground, summoning the dragonborn root in Dragonmont. Dot. From far south magma answered, channeling up the talisman chain at his neck, flooding his veins with molten pulse. He felt skin blister. He roared a sound part human, part something older. Red gold light burst from his hands, searing across the mirror, tracing runic cracks. Daenerys understood instantly, raising wildfire torch high, then hurling it. The glass shattered, green inferno erupting. Within it, silver limbs melted to slag. Lythene's armored chestplate shrieked, splitting like rotten wood. She fell, eyes wide with wonder turned fear, then dissolved in argent spray. Shadow Wolf staggered, power unraveling. Drogon bit down, jaws shearing helm and head alike. The void imploded, spurting coins of starlight that winked out before touching floor. When silence returned, true silence, they stood amid ruined pipes, steaming with alchemical froth. Embry leaned heavily on a spear butt, gasping, but his eyes shone bright with grim triumph. John's burns sizzled. Daenerys pressed healing salve over blistered wrists. Tormund spat silver-flecked phlegm, grinning. "It's done," Jon muttered. "Not done." Embry lifted a charred shard, within which trembled a scrap of pale weirwood root stained black. They had more branches than one. Months passed beneath grinding storms. Crews scoured every port for Thistle Moon agents. Maesters petitioned Citadel Archons to abandon forbidden alchemical studies. Many complied. Some vanished. Lythane's name spread among fisherfolk as a warning. Salt witches who bled the living. Yet the wall's hinges beat stronger than ever. At Dragonmont, the sapling shed blossoms of glowing white ash that drifted over Sleeper's Bay, kindling water with faint light. Fishermen found nets full of ivory-scaled trout, believed extinct. At the Eyrie, Arya's root lattice flowered blood-red leaves even in snowfall. Falcons built nests among them, their chicks fledging crimson-plumed, talons black as obsidian, watchbirds none dared poach. In Winterfell's crypts, Bran's sapling coaxed moss to bloom between kingly toe bones, perfuming cold air with a scent like distant summer. Hodor remained, eternal and serene. Ravens nested in his shoulders. Children of kings and cooks alike trekked in pilgrimage to Nightfort, leaving offerings, carved toys, polished stones, seeds of mountain flowers. Some he kept, hung on roots. Others he passed to visiting orphans with a gentle Hodor, a blessing carrying warmth deeper than sermon. One spring dawn, the hinge pulse within every bearer settled into steady cadence, a metronome guiding dawn chorus itself. And Bran dreamed of a wall encircled by orchards instead of battle lines, watchtowers turned to observatories, mapping comets rather than whites. 5 years later, not a long span for realms, yet enough to birth change. Sansa walked Winterfell's battlements with a parchment roll thicker than a boar's hide. It bore sigh marks from every great and minor lord south of the Neck, the Charter of the Living Wall. The charter enshrined wards against exploitation of hinge saplings, forbade trade in their roots, tasked each lord to supply tithes of grain for Nightfort pilgrims. She found Bran beneath the godswood canopy, sketching constellations no maester recognized. She set the charter beside him. "All have signed," she said. "Even the Ironborn. Asha Greyjoy first of all." Bran smiled faintly. "Then we are ready for the next weaving." At meeting of hinge-bearers that midsummer, they gathered. Jon, Daenerys, Arya, Sansa, Tormund representing free folk, Maester Ambrose, even Shara Waynwood and Wyman, Manderly. Bran wheeled himself into their ring under Nightfort's vine-flowered arch, and told them of visions beyond cold and fire. Visions of doorways once sealed, because men feared what lay farther than north or beneath volcano, or in mountain peaks. "We sealed death to stop night," he said. "But now we must open life to heal day." He spoke of a fourth hinge, one not of bone or frost or magma or sky, but of water, deep where tides met ghost currents from the uttermost west. There, Bran had sensed a sunken heart tree, still singing in blackness. If they revived it, realms of sea would join the lattice, drawing storms into pattern, rather than chaos, cradling coasts against flooding moons. Faces paled, yet no one laughed. They had seen the impossible thrice already. Jon rose. "Then we sail." The voyage took them beyond Summer Isles, past Ashai Rumor, into seas cartographers left blank. Winds turned warm, then chill, then warm again, as if seasons quarreled. They sighted whales with ivory horns, islands of glass reeds, storms swirling upright like towers before collapsing. Through all, Arya's crimson falcon scouted, Drogon and Rhaegal's sword. At last the water glowed jade though moonless night. Sea lights traced patterns matching hinge runes. Embry declared the abyss beneath bottomless. They anchored over it anyway. Jon, Daenerys, and Bran, now born in a glass diving sphere of maester invention, descended, talismans blazing silver. Down long hours they drifted, crushing dark, pressing against tempered crystal. At deepest gloom, shapes gathered. Schools of eyeless fish shimmering with hinge light, ribbons of kelp braided like hair, shards of obsidian rising from mud. At center of an impact crater lay the weirwood, trunk twisted into a spiral mirroring thorncoin sign but reversed, a spiral outward not inward. Branches lacked leaves, bark flaked, yet life pulsed deep. Jon sliced his palm, let blood bead upon glass viewport. Daenerys did likewise, her drop blooming red in water. The two drops merged, drifted onto pale bark. Bran closed eyes. Through roots he guided flame of Dragonmont, chill of airy snows, hush of Winterfell crypts. The trunk glowed, fissures knitting. Leaves unfurled, luminescent fronds casting daylight in abyss. Ocean stirred. Currents converged from every quadrant, swirling around trunk, then upward in a helical braid, through which silver plankton whirled. Bran whispered a word none would later remember. The hinge awoke. Above, the sea's surface bulged, but instead of monstrous wave it rippled outward, smoothing hurricanes to breezes, bending maelstroms into calm eddies. Sailors on every ocean reported compasses spinning then stabilizing to truer north. Tides realigned to gentler crescents, leaving harvests of coral-born pearls for coastal poor. Years passed once more. Stories shifted. Children no longer feared Nightfort. They studied there under maesters of green and gold, learning of convergence rather than cold. The wall remained, but no longer separated life from death. It framed life's garden, a reminder that vigilance and nurture must walk hand in hand. Jon and Daenerys ruled from twin thrones of clouded glass, forged by dragonfire and star iron, not over subjects but guardians elected each decade. Arya roamed as envoy where threads frayed, 1 week in Korth, ending a blood feud with tales of a gentle giant, the next on Bear Island mediating clan quarrels. Sansa's charter matured into a living codex, scribed onto weirwood paper, whose letters shifted color with hinge pulse, warning scribes of misbalanced seasons long before farmers felt them. One winter evening, Bran wheeled into Nightfort courtyard, where Hodor still stood, though his roots had thickened into pillars, his hair grown into trailing vines of scarlet leaves. Ravens lined the branches above him, silent. Bran pressed his forehead against bark-fused brow. "Friend," he whispered, "we have woven all we dared." The giant's eyes opened slowly. They held galaxies of reflected dawns. His lips moved around the familiar syllables, but added new resonance. A polyphonic harmony of all doors held, all hinges forged, all walls sealed then opened. The sound rose, rang through weirwood and ice and magma and ocean, until every living being looked up, hearing it inside ribs and memories. "Hodor," he said. In that single word, Bran felt the hollow within him finally close. Not gone, but filled with echoing light. It spread through kingdoms of men and women and waters and skies, until the world itself exhaled at last, choosing, despite scars, despite centuries of night, to breathe hope without fear. Dawn spilled thin silver across the wall, glimmering on every frost-encrusted stone, and setting the lattice of living roots around Hodor aglow like veins of fire beneath ice. Jon Snow watched the horizon until pain worked its familiar knot between his shoulders, the ache that never quite left him since the hinges had been forged. The realm breathed through those hinges now, and when any of them trembled, the hollow beneath his breastbone answered. On this clear morning the pulse was even, calm, and yet unease fluttered at the edges of his mind, vague as a half-remembered nightmare. Ghost emerged from the battlement's stairwell, the wolf's muzzle brushing Jon's chilled knuckles in silent greeting. A second set of paws padded after him. Shiver, grown sleek and strong in the years since her crimson leaf birth at the airy hinge. She hovered protectively at Ghost's flank, nose twitching at scents Jon's duller senses could not decipher. The direwolves exchanged a brief rumble, and in that low conversation John fancied he heard the wall itself listening. Footsteps scraped behind him. Maester Ambrose approached, layered in gray furs that transformed the once stooped scholar into something sturdy as a Greenland bear. He carried no scrolls, only a small wooden box bound by brass clasps, its surface etched with the spiral outward sigil Bran had devised as the realm's new seal of concord. Ambrose's breath feathered white in the still air. "It thrums gently," he said without preamble. The crypt hinge, the mountain, the volcano, all steady. Even the sea root sings contentment. John nodded, though the tension inside him eased only a fraction. Contentment can sour faster than milk if men grow restless. Ambrose glanced toward the skeletal scaffolds that rose against the wall's eastern stretch, where stonemasons labored at carving small postern arches to welcome travelers in summer months. Men are never still for long. But curiosity needn't be our enemy. Perhaps. John remembered Lythene Carr's hollow smile and the silver pipes pulsing with bloodless hearts. Yet every curiosity has its cost. From the yard below came a sudden chorus of children's laughter. High, bright, utterly unafraid. The night fort, once a haunt of terrors, now housed families of craftsmen and scholars. Where the rat cook had stalked legend, bakers kneaded barley loaves. In the cell that had been Mad Axe's cage, a seamstress cut winter's cloak patterns for the newborns of free folk couples. The transformation felt fragile as spun sugar, but it was real. A horn blast echoed from the east tower. 2 notes, the call for riders approaching. John turned instinctively, scanning the snow-dusted track that wound toward the castle. 3 figures on shaggy garrons materialized from pale sunlight. At their head rode Arya Stark. She dismounted before John reached the gate, snowflakes melting on her dark hair. Needle hung at one hip, a curved Braavosi dagger at the other. Her gray eyes fixed on him with the urgency of a crow's dart. "The small council summons," she said. "Bran needs us in Winterfell at once. Something new stirs at the sea hinge." John's pulse skipped. "An attack?" "Not yet. But the route there is changing, growing faster than Maester Talfar can measure. Bran tasted salt wine and starlight through it. He says the deep hinge is calling." Embry's brow furrowed. "Calling what, I wonder?" Arya shook her head. "That's what we sail to learn." She pressed a wax-sealed scroll into John's glove. "Sansa Reedy's provisions. Daenerys has Drogon harnessed. Rhaegal waits at Skagos cliffs." John's decision took no time. The realm's heartbeat demanded swift answers. He gave orders for Tormund to command the Night Fort garrison, then strode for the rookery to loose ravens south. By the hourglass turn he, Arya, and Ambrose were airborne on Drogon's broad back. Ghost and Shiver lashed in padded harnesses just behind the saddle. No steed could have borne the weight of 2 direwolves and 3 grown riders, yet the dragon scarcely noticed. His wings beat against a sky of relentless sapphire. Beneath them the north unfolded in shifting quilts. Evergreen forests, thawed meadow rivers sparkling like strewn coin, villages rising where farmsteads had once crouched alone under winter's lash. They passed Winterfell's towers. Sansa waved from the battlements, copper hair blazing, and banked southeast, following the glittering rill of the White Knife, until the land melted into slate-gray sea. Dragons made the voyage that once required weeks in less than a day. They circled the anchored flagship Dawnlight, Bran's chosen vessel, carved of black pine and banded in star iron, and landed on the broad deck amid a roar of startled gulls. Sailors bowed as John dismounted. Ghost leapt free, nosing at coils of hemp. Shiver followed, snow-white fur bright against wet planks. Bran waited near the mainmast, a cloak of weirwood red draped over his withered shoulders. The crease between his brows betrayed sleepless nights. "The root trembles with life unseen since the Dawn Age," he greeted them, voice hoarse. "Something vast moves beneath, something old enough that even the children's songs only hint at its waking." Embry opened his brass-clasped box, revealing 3 hourglass vials of swirling sap, white, red, and palest blue. "We can read the change if we anchor these to the trunk," he said. "But the hinge lies 700 fathoms down. We have no sphere with so much strength. Then? Bran's pale lips curled. We have magic enough. He raised a hand, indicating Daenerys where she stood, stroking Drogon's massive jaw. Fire and ice wove the upper hinges. We will add darkness and depth. Drogon will bear the vials. I will ride his mind. Jon, you and Arya guard us above. Daenerys met Jon's gaze, silent agreement passing between them. They had flown into Kraken storms and smoked volcanoes together. They would fly again. Night fell swift and brooding. The sea hinge glimmered beneath, an emerald glow suffusing black water in concentric spirals. Lanterns aboard Dawnlight were doused to keep mortal light from disrupting the hinge's song. Only starlight, moonlight, and that otherworldly glow remained. Drogon vaulted skyward, plunged in a single monumental sweep of wings, and speared the waves. Jon's breath caught as giant ripples fanned outward, scattering phosphorescent plankton that painted luminous wakes around the ship. For long minutes, nothing broke the surface, save eddies that rolled like silver coins. Then the dragon emerged, water cascading from outstretched wings. Talons clutching a piece of stone so dark, it devoured moonlight. Obsidian, but veined with veins that pulsed jade. He deposited the chunk gently upon the deck. The vials Embry had secreted within Drogon's harness glowed, drained now of their swirl. Whatever essence they held had been swallowed by the hinge and returned crystallized in this stone. Bran's face shone. Heartstone, he whispered. The deep Rude's gift. The stone vibrated, faint but steady, humming through the deck into boots and bones. Sailors shuddered. Arya pressed bare fingertips to its surface and hissed. 1,000 images flooded her. Abyssal trenches where pale leviathans slept. Bright coral forests singing in silent currents. Broken towers half buried in silt. Doors carved with runes older than Valyria. All glimpsed in a blink, gone as she snatched her hand away. It wants, she breathed. But I cannot say what. Bran's eyes turned white as frost. He reached into the stone, bridging Greenseer's sight with ocean memory. Moments passed, too long, until his shoulders sagged and color returned to his cheeks. The hinge is securing allies, he said. Not monsters, not foes. Guardians of the deep. He looked to Jon. When the Night King fell, the balance tilted. Winter's tide was broken, yet power rarely leaves a vacuum. Beneath waves, another realm waited. Now it rises, not to conquer, but to anchor its own cycle alongside ours. We must decide whether to clasp its hand or draw steel. Embry rasped, half-dazed. What realm? Merlings? Selkies? Children who fled the land. Bran's gaze drifted beyond Dawnlight's rail toward dark swells. They call themselves the Amarin. They are water and moonlight, memory made flesh. Twice they offered pact in the Age of Heroes and were refused. They see that we have woven 4 hinges. They wish to bind the 5th and final. Tide. Daenerys crossed her arms. What would that binding cost? A sentinel, Bran replied. Aes Hodor is sentinel of ice, as our saplings serve fire and sky and death's echo. They demand a living soul to stand at the ocean gate. A heavy quiet settled. Jon knew what question leapt to every mind. Who would pay that price? Already the Starks and their kin had surrendered much. Hodor fixed in bark, Bran confined to roots of memory, Arya bound to a bird's restless flight, Jon himself tethered by the molten circlet, seared into his brow. Could they ask another to stand eternal watch? Sails snapped overhead. The sea groaned. A voice drifted from starboard, a song so soft Jon thought it wind until he saw sailors freeze, heads cocked to listen. The melody slipped between senses, liquid as water over stones. It carried sorrow, longing, promise. Shapes like translucent manta surfaced, fins trailing veils of pearl. At their center rose a figure of rippling light, human in outline yet fluid within, as though formed of moonlit tide encased in glass. Jon's hand found Longclaw's hilt. Arya mirrored him, though her posture eased when the figure raised slender arms in greeting. It spoke not with tongue but with resonance felt behind the breastbone, a vibration of meaning rather than words. Guardian of flame, guardian of frost, kin of wolf and dragon, will you parley at the middle tide? Bran answered within their minds. We hear you, people of the Amarin. Speak your purpose. The figure's edges shimmered. To weave hinge with tide, we must root in mortal memory. Gift us a sentinel who straddles earth and sea, thought and current, and we will bind storms to gentle songs, famine to plenty, warships to currents of peace. Daenerys stepped forward, hair whipping in brine-laden gusts. I was born of storms, she said aloud, voice carrying across the still deck. Tell me the cost in flesh, not poetry. No death, only transformation. The sentinel lives as tide lives, ebbing from shore, returning. Centuries for you, heartbeats for us. 1 night in 10 you may walk land, 9 you dwell in deep. Bran's brow knitted. Who among us can bear such change? A sailor's cry cut the air, painful, raw day. All eyes turned. A youth no more than 15 clutched his chest, face contorted. Jon recognized him belatedly. Padraig Waters, orphan from the fingers, taken aboard for his uncanny talent with rigging and knots. The song thrummed through him. Skin shimmered faintly. He staggered toward the rail. Padraig, Jon called. Stay? The boy's eyes were wide but calm. Lord, I feel them calling my name. Arya reached to steady him. Beneath her grip, his pulse beat in time with the heartstone's hum. Bran's sight flared white. He is half-tied already, the Greenseer whispered. His mother carried Amarin blood, dilute through ages, yet strong enough now. Padraig gazed at the moonlit figure. Resolve flowered across his boyish features. I've dreamed of water all my life, he said. Dreamed I belonged nowhere above it. If my place is beneath, let it be for good purpose. Daenerys' throat bobbed. He is a child. The Amarin emissary flowed closer, never quite touching the waves. Destiny ages souls swift, it sang. The sentinel chooses. Choice is sovereign. Jon knelt before Padraig, hands on the youth's shoulders. Do you understand what you give up? Family, hearth, the simple taste of bread. Padraig's smile held tears. I've eaten little but salt my whole life. Let me give back something sweeter. Silence wreathed the deck. Ambrose closed his wooden box. The clasps clicked like fate. Bran exhaled as though releasing an arrow. Then we bear witness. Let the hinge accept its sentinel. Now. The emissary lifted arms. Azure filaments streamed to envelop Padraig. He did not scream. He only sighed, as though stepping into a hot bath after chill toil. His flesh dissolved to luminous water, reshaping into sleek form with fin-etched shoulders and hands webbed by pearly membrane. Where legs had been grew a tapered tail fin. Yet his face remained Padraig's, eyes bright with wonder. He dipped his new body in a bow to Jon, Arya, Daenerys, then dove over the rail. The sea hinge roared. Emerald spirals widened until dawnlight seemed afloat upon a jewel. Current lines braided, wrapping the ship in loops of gentle force that guided it to perfect stillness. From the depths rose pillars of water that hardened into translucent archways, each adorned with living coral blooming white and violet. Padraig re-emerged, now wearing a circlet of shell and star iron twin to Jon's molten band. Storms will bend, tides will heed the old oaths, the Amarin sang through him. So long as sentinel breathes, ocean walks beside earth. Bran sagged but his smile glowed. The hinge is woven. Morning found dawnlight escorted by mantas of light. Sailors hauled nets brimming with silverfish bigger than a man's thigh. Tithe from the Amarin, offered freely. Gull cries harmonized with unseen choirs beneath the hull, and winds filled sails with gentle constancy. They charted north, bound for White Harbor, where news would spread like sunrise. Yet, Jones Hollow did not vanish. Power-balanced might tilt again. For each hinge forged, possibilities multiplied. Of misuse, of envy, of hearts seduced by glow of root and song. He resolved to ask Sansa to send trusted stewards to every coastal lord, teaching them respect for the Tide Hingen's gifts and costs. Men must learn before fear grew. They made landfall, under banners newly cast with Tide Spiral. White Harbor thrummed with festival energy. Fisherfolk wept at crates of fish gifted from Jon's holds. Children painted shells with dire wolf sigils. Yet, even in celebration, whispers rose. Of jealous merchant princes who would pay gold for water sentinels. Of pirates seeking moonlit guide stones rumored to calm storms. That night, council gathered in Manderley's great hall. Bran, pale and weary, rolled maps across a long table. Hinges endure so long as guardianship remains vow, not barter. We must craft wards of law, tradition and story, else greed will gnaw. Sansa tapped quill to parchment. We publish Song of the Five Hinges, lessons for every septi and hearth. Bards will sing of Padrake's choice. Hodor's stand. The saplings bloom. Embry added, we found broken Valyrian tablets in the sea stone. They speak of 9 hinges once dreamt by dragonseers. If more fragments surface, opportunists will chase them. We must prepare. Arya leaned back, shadow dancing in torchlight across her sharp features. Preparation is fine, but blades stay sharp only in use. Who trains the next generation of swords to defend these wards? Her gaze flicked to Jon. We do, Jon answered. And we teach them that steel is last resort. First, they learn to listen. To roots, to waves, to wind. Then, training halls were built in each hinge city, Winterfell, Eyrie, Dragonstone, Nightfort, and newly christened Port of Mirrors, where the tide route breached shoreline rock in glassy spires. Their children of all bloods studied, free folk and Dornish, islanders and northern crofters, even Lannister heirs sent by Lady Joy to appease pride with humility. They learned languages of Branch Creek, Lava Rumble, Falcon's Cry, Wolf's Howl, Tidal Hush. They sparred with wooden blades and whale-rib staves, meditated beneath heart trees and among coral gardens. Magisters predicted chaos. Instead, rivalries cooled. When fights erupted, the hinges' pulse flared in their chests until anger thinned and comprehension seeped in. Still, far lands watched with covetous eyes. In Qarth, the 13 convened, debating fleets of prism ships to capture amber saplings. In Volantis, red priests fashioned sermons proclaiming Valyrian claim over all mortal magic. And deep within the ruins of Valyria itself, something stirred in choking ash, echo of doom not yet sated. Daenerys felt it first, a tremor in Drogon's sleep, wings flicking restless sparks against black marble of Dragonstone's courtyard. She knelt by his slumbering head, palm on scaled brow, and the vision burst, valley of smoking pits, shadows of stone men stumbling as if pushed by unseen wind, a heartbeat beneath magma older than any hinge. She woke shaking. This is no hinge, Embry warned after hearing her tale. It is the wound of the world, and wounds sometimes fester anew. Jon convened the others. They agreed. Valyria must be scouted. Not invaded, not reclaimed, but watched. Arya volunteered before words quite escaped lips. I walk unseen, she said. Bran insisted on guiding her through green dreams. Ghost and Shiver would accompany in flesh. A small ship, the Quiet Step, set sail at dawn, carrying Arya, the wolves, 2 mute free folk rowers, and Bran's ravens perched in the rigging. Their journey passed into rumor. Stories trickled back months later, of a slender warrior leaping crumbling spires chased by clouds of gray ash, of direwolves howling beneath shattered arches as red rain fell upward, of ravens etched with emerald runes hovering over pits where dying magic spasmed like serpent tails. They spoke also of survivors rescued, stone men cured when Arya pressed heartstone shards to their scaleless flesh. One winter eve she returned, hair singed, boots caked in black glass dust, eyes alight with terrible knowledge. She placed a bundle at Jon's feet, a curved dagger of night steel hotter than forge iron though long cooled. its edge lined with glimmering green flecks that pulsed to the hinge's beat. "The wound Earth's weapons," Arya said, voice stark. "If wrong hands find them, no hinge stands." Embry studied the blade in awe. Forged of doomfire and hinge residue, a paradox made solid. It can open doors or cleave them. John's hollow yawned wider. The realm had risen from frozen death to weave wonder, but creation coaxed invention. Invention temptation. They must decide whether to hide such power, destroy it, or fold it into tapestry before someone else wove darker threads. Council split. Some argued knowledge withheld breeds fear. Others warned raw doomfire no law could tame. Bran sought guidance in dreams, and saw only crossroads. One path bright but fragile, another safe but stagnant. He placed decision in mortal hands. In the end, Daenerys proposed forging the doomfire blades into 7 small keys, each attuned to a hinge. If wielded together dishonorably, their magic would clash, consuming wielder. But if raised in unity by chosen guardians, they could reroute hinge power to seal ruptures or quell cataclysm. So 7 keys were cast. Frost key for Winterfell, entrusted to Sansa Todd. Sky key for Aerie, given to Shara Waynwood. Flame key for Dragonstone, borne by Daenerys herself. Gate key for Nightfort, hung at Hodor's vines, its presence humming through his eternal word. Tide key for Port of Mirrors, placed in Padraike's coral circlet. Shadow key for Wintertown, where wounded ghosts of past wars were tended. Arya kept it at her belt. And the 7th, root key, forged of equal parts. All elements fused, Bran sealed in Heart Tree Hollow, inside the Isle of Faces, watched by green men older than kingdoms. Years slid onward like calm rivers, and the realm settled into equilibrium, so delicate, every heartbeat seemed to hold breath. Children raised in training halls matured into wardens of the weave, scholars and warriors both. They patrolled not borders, but disturbances, storms too fierce, droughts too long, whispers of clandestine cults, chasing moonblood potions. On the eve of the 21st year since Hodor's stand, Bran summoned all guardians to the Night Fort. Winter snows had returned, gentle now, caressing rather than punishing. In the courtyard beneath lantern glow, Bran spoke from his chair beside Hodor's towering form. "The weave is strong," he began, voice brittle like aged parchment. "Yet my sight dims. The roots that held me here recede. Another must guide song." A murmur rippled among assembly. Jon stepped forward, but Bran raised a frail hand. "Not you, brother. You are molten, fixed to earth's fire. Nor Arya, who walks too free. Nor Sansa, whose voice steers mortals. The sentinel of tides cannot anchor land, and our queen of dragons stands as flame made flesh. The guide must be of many threads, none overpowering." "Then?" He turned his gaze toward a young woman kneeling in Watcher's Row. Lyanna Mormont's ward, Alice Karstark, grown fierce and thoughtful. She had studied sap runings, ridden spars with Arya, sung sea lullabies with Padraike's choir. Her eyes reflected root spirals beneath starlight. Bran beckoned. "Your blood carries echoes of forest and winter river. Will you bear vision?" "Now." Alice's jaw trembled, yet her voice rang steady. "I will." In ceremony beneath the heart tree, root key melted at Bran's touch, pouring molten radiance over Alicent's chest without scorching. It seeped into her heart, crystallizing anew as an astra-shaped scar just above her sternum. Bran exhaled, weight lifting from his narrow shoulders, eyes closed in peace for first time since they'd turned white in childhood. He slumped, not dead, not dying, but freed. The weirwood vines eased him from chair, cradling him upright beside Hodor. Bark crept over his limbs with gentle inexorability. Within moments he stood transformed. Second sentinel, Green's ear root, eyes closed in quiet watch. Elise wept, then squared shoulders. She heard the hinges instantly, 5 chords thrumming, subtle discord signaling storms off Dorne, frost giants stirring memories in distant Norvosian peaks. She spoke the warnings, Messages flew. The world did not quake. It adjusted. Jon mourned his brother's surrender to Bark, but saw wisdom. Bran had given childhood, youth, and vision to realms. At last he rested, tree and man entwined in undying hush. Daenerys touched Hodor's wooden arm, whispered thanks. The giant's reply, Hodor, rolled like thunder softened by time, and branches overhead sighed golden. Seasons continued, weaving tales into legend. Merchants boasted of safe seas, poets penned odes to the hinges, smiths forged star-iron farm tools that doubled harvests. War became rarity, settled often by judged trials within hinge courts where guardians sat in circle, keys arrayed like points of compass. When blood spilled, songs rose lamenting cost. Seldom did grievance reach boiling. But perfection invites hubris. In lists, a cabal of pleasure magi replicated hinge resonance, using stolen chips of doomfire iron. Their experiments birthed shimmering illusions so vivid men believed them real, until illusions chewed flesh. 13 died before island masters begged help. Arya led wardens through silken streets, her shadow key unweaving monstrous phantoms. In aftermath, she sealed off vaults with ice runes and left Lysine magi to rebuild with memory of what power unchecked can unleash. In Qohor, steel rites invented blades singing in harmony with Frostkey. Wielders felled beasts twice their size with effortless arcs. Sansa authorized trade on condition of shared stewardship and serious schooling. She dispatched tutors who taught smiths to embed lullaby verses within steel, so each cut bled only corrupt growths, never healthy wood or beast. Qohor thrived, and war shrank further. Years spiraled. Jon's hair silvered. Daenerys proved ageless, flame bending her blood. Ghost and Shiver birthed litters whose pups roamed as free guardians across continent. The hinges pulsed, each tempo distinct yet harmonic. Even doomfire keys quieted within their keepers' hands. On Jon's 63rd name day, he climbed to Hodor's bridge at dawn. Snow drifted but did not stick, melting on warm vines. He pressed weathered palm to wooden wrist. "We did as best we could," he murmured. "Tell me it was enough." Leaves rustled, ravens croaked gentle assent, and wind carried scent of pine, salt, peat, and distant sulfur. Scents of all hinges mingled. Hodor's lips curved. One word rumbled outward, older now than any tongue yet still simple as childhood. Hodor. Jon's hollow filled with warmth. Aelys Karstark's voice echoed faintly in his mind. A new star has appeared near the dawn, comet green as weirwood leaves returning in spring. Portent of long balance. He smiled at last, gazing over land once scarred by war, now quilted with orchards, training halls, tide gardens, fire terraces. Balance, not forever. Time sculpts change unending, but enough. He descended, small drifts sweeping behind. Somewhere within living root and crystal sap, Bran dreamed unending. Hodor hummed eternal. Padrake swam beneath moon-silver tides. Arya negotiated peace between shadows and light. Sansa penned histories on weirwood parchment that shifted to keep pace with truth. And Daenerys soared on Dragonwing, her laughter trailing sparks across stable skies. Children learned these names as much as any seasonal constellations. They understood that doors held, walls sealed, hinges turned, and hope, when anchored by sacrifice and guarded by humility, could outlast the fiercest winter. Under the wide, forgiving sky of a realm rebuilt from frost and flame, wolf howl and wave song twined in gentle fugue, an anthem for all those who chose to stand, to hold, to weave, and above all, to believe. Snow whispered against tower stones high above the Nightfort courtyard, as dawn's first blush faded, swallowed by low iron clouds rolling east from the shivering sea. Somewhere beyond that muted horizon Padrake waters, tide sentinel now for 2 generations of men, would be spiraling past coral buttresses, listening to whale choirs echo the hinges' collective hum. On land, the hush felt fuller than it had in years, amplified by winter's hush, and by the absence of dragons. Daenerys had taken Drogon and Rhaegal south a fortnight earlier, answering a summons from Dorne, where desert winds howled of cracks in the flame root's song. Jon Snow, hair silver as frost, shoulders broad yet bowed, stood alone on the parapet, gloved hand resting upon the still warm vines that cocooned Bran and Hodor. Below, torches bobbed as stewards roused the keep, but those shifting pinpoints felt very far away. He closed his eyes and listened inward. 5 chords rippled across his bones, steady as ever. Frost from Winterfell's crypts, sky from the Erie's scarlet leaves, flame from Dragonstone's molten sapwood, tide from Port of Mirrors, gate from Hodor's living bark. Balance. Yet a faint dissonance rang beneath, too slight for alarm but present nonetheless, like a single harp string a hair off true. Ace Karstark would sense it too. She would have risen before the first lanterns were lit, bare feet kissing snow in Winterfell's godswood as she communed with root fire and river echo. Jon pictured her there, eyes closed, breath pluming, the star scar on her breast pulsing in time to some deep unearthly drum. A flutter of wings tugged him back. A raven descended, glossy feathers catching pale light. It bore no scroll. Instead, a silver-green sprig of weirwood leaf lay knotted to its leg with red thread. Jon freed it carefully, brow creasing. Ellie's silent summons, "Come soon, speak little." He brushed Ghost's Ridge where the old wolf lay at his feet. The animal rose stiffly, muzzle dusted white. Together, they descended spiral stairs slick with hoarfrost, crossed the courtyard, and stepped into the echoing corridor that tunneled beneath the wall toward the east stables. Arya waited by the gate arch in traveling leathers, snow already stippling her dark cloak, shadow key glinting at her belt. Beside her, Shiver paced, still lupine spry though near a dozen winters. "You felt it too," she said without greeting. "A tremor," Jon answered, "but slight. It's growing." Ace marked it before dawn. The sea hinge pulses faster, tides in flood phase though the moon wanes. She glanced upward where clouds churned. Padraic sent word through wave song. Something stirs beyond western deeps. Icebergs birthing without cold, currents reversing beneath their hulls. He tried to trace the source, but the ocean there is silent. Jon exhaled a ribbon of steam. Another breach? Or someone forging where we never look? Arya's hand brushed the shadow key again. Valyrian steel beneath its star iron lacing was warm even in chill. "We should ride." By midday they galloped from Winterfell, Ghost and Shiver loping ahead. Stewards packed only what the horses could bear. Hardtack, smoked elk, a satchel of star iron nails smithed under Ambrose's eye, and 2 phials of heartstone dust, hushed gifts from Padraic's coral archives, meant to sew hinges if small rents appeared. A guard offered Jon his heavy black-silver mail, but he accepted only a boiled leather vest. If real war loomed, metal wouldn't shield better than flame. Besides, his molten circlet rested always at his brow, unseen yet palpable, ready to channel hinge fire at need. They reached Winterfell at moonrise. The old castle glowed from 1,000 lanterns, yet unease prickled folk bustling within the walls. Servants hurried with heads bent. Stable grooms murmured of horses skittish for no reason. Jon and Arya dismounted by the godswood, snow crunching beneath boots. A single torch flared beneath the red-leaved canopy where Alice waited, her cloak pure white save the crimson lining that mirrored the heart tree behind her. She greeted them with a finger pressed to lips, then touched the trunk. Bark split silently, revealing a hollow where root key once lay. Jon stiffened, empty. But Ellie's lifted her palm. The aster scar pulsed brighter, and there between her spread fingers the root key floated, forged anew within flesh of light. She let it fade back beneath skin. "The roots buckle under a foreign cadence," she whispered. "Not an attack, yet. More like an invitation forced. Someone outside our weave hammers their own pattern and it bleeds interference." Jon asked the question with his eyes. Alis nodded. "Valyria's wound again. Those shards Arya brought home. They were not the only ones." She gestured. Bran, Linya's face serene, remained unchanged, but Hodor's leaves trembled, despite windless air. Something down there tries forging a hinge of its own, using doomfire as thread. Arya swore, low. The magi we banished. Ellie shook her head. Could be what taught them. Its voice feels older. Jon glanced skyward, half expecting a comet's tail. Nothing but rolling gray. We need eyes in the smoke. I will guide you, Ellie said. But my body stays here. If the roots warp further, someone must anchor them. She turned to Arya. You know the roads of ash. Arya's answering grin was feral. I still feel cinders in my lungs. I'll walk them again. Jon nodded. I'll fly you close. Rhaegal can bear us both. Drogon remains in Dorne. He faced allies. Hold fast. If we fail. You will not, she interrupted, a flicker of Bran's old certainty in her gaze. But hurry. The dissonance will reach crescendo by moon's crest. The flight southeast tasted of lightning. Rhaegal's green-gold wings carved corrugations in thunderheads. Rain steamed off scales in hissing sheets. Beneath, the smoking sea yawned like a cauldron of ink. The broken volcanoes of Valyria silhouetted by intermittent magma flares. As they neared, Arya donned a bandit's cloth to filter toxic air. Jon felt his circlet heat, responding to doomfire pulses even leagues away. They landed on a finger of obsidian jutting from black sand, the same cove Arya had used before. Ghost and Shiver bounded ahead, noses wrinkling at sulfur stench. Fissures glowed crimson underfoot. Air shimmered with warped heat, though night reigned overhead. Arya kneeled, palm flat to glassy ground. There, she muttered, pointing inland where a dim aurora of green flame leaked skyward from a collapsed caldera. They dig where the earth's lid is thinnest. Jon followed silently, cloak drawn tight. They skirted jagged crags, crossing bridges of vitrified ash that cracked like old bone. Memories flickered. Stories of the doom, of dragonlords shattered by their own sorceries. He wondered whether the land remembered their names and hungered for new ones. The caldera rim loomed, a halo of fractured spires. From within rose chanting, low, rhythmic, not Valyrian but something harsher, vowels crushed under consonants. Jon edged to a notch, Arya crouched opposite. Below sprawled a pit where magma pooled sluggishly, birthing orange-red mist. At its edge stood a scaffold of carved nightstone supporting a spindle taller than 6 men, a lattice of obsidian ribs set with shards glowing green, doomfire splinters beating like hearts. Chains of star iron bound them, hammered into spirals almost, but not quite, like hinge script. Figures moved along scaffold, a dozen men and women, ash-coated, naked save rune tattoos that pulsed emerald. One shape dwarfed the rest. A giant torso fused to serpentine tail, scales forged of mirror glass. Its head was crowned with tubes that vented green flame in sighing gusts. Ghost low growled. Shiver's hackles rose. Arya's dagger slipped free without sound. Jon's circlet flared with heat. He heard, or felt, words carried on invisible tide. Root lost, gate silent, fathoms yield. Bind us to the sky that betrayed. He hissed to Arya. They're rewriting the wall's oldest spells. If they finish, we'll cut the threads before they knot. Arya slid down scree, silent as moonlight. Ghost and Shiver flanked her. Shadows inside shadows. Jon placed hand to circlet. Flood of hinge flame answered. He whispered a plea to Rhaegal waiting among distant peaks, then followed. The air thickened with sorcery at pit's floor. Every breath tasted of copper and burnt basil. Acolytes chanted, hands outstretched toward the spindle. The giant creature coiled round base plates, injecting tubes of molten shard into grooves. Jon saw star iron keys hanging from chain belts. 6 in total, forged crudely to mimic his guardian's true keys. Fake yet potent, each resonated disharmonic with hinges miles away. Arya struck first. She slipped behind an acolyte, blade whispering across throat, catching him before he hit ground. In same breath she hurled a throwing knife. It pierced second cultist's eye. Ghost pounced on third, jaws crushing collarbone. Shiver tore at another's leg, sending him screaming into magma pool where screams ended abrupt. Jon strode into lamplight, Longclaw glowing red gold as circlet channeled flame root through steel. He cleaved a rune-painted woman from clavicle to hip. Sword hissed where her blood hit volcanic glass. Others turned, mouths agape. Chants faltered. Arya danced among them, needle flicking, never still. Yet the giant serpent remained, 4 golden eyes fixing on Jon. It uncoiled, shedding sparks. A voice rattled like gravel poured down a brass tube. Blood of snow, key of fire, yield your roots. Jon lifted sword. You will break no more hinges. And who are you to deny Unraveler? The monster hissed. Keeper. It lunged. Jon dodged. Felt scaled tail graze plate. Heat blistering. He swung Longclaw in rising arc. Blade met mirrored scales, rebounded with clang that rattled teeth. The serpent's maw split. Jet of green flame erupted. Jon threw himself behind basalt outcrop. Fire-drenched stone, carving rivulets of glowing scar. His circlet blazed, drawing hinge flame. Sweat sizzled on brow. He shaped thought into ward. Flame cocoon swirling about him. When serpent exhaled again, its doomfire strike met a whirling shield of orange gold. Winds shrieked as conflicting magics warred. Cross pit, Arya reached the spindle space. She yanked a crude imitation key from bracket. The lattice flickered, hum faltering. She cut another, nails blistering at touch of overheated star iron. The remaining acolytes rushed her. Shiver intercepted, teeth snapping necks. Yet more arrows of green light shot from lattice above, striking floor near Arya's feet. She rolled, ducking behind a chunk of obsidian. Shards sliced the air she'd occupied. Jon broke stalemate, rushing serpent while its flame tapered. He leapt, circlet flaring brighter, Longclaw carved diagonal line through mirrored scales. Glass splintered, spattering light. The monster shrieked, tail thrashing. Jon landed, sliced again, severing vent tube at neck. Emerald fire spewed sideways. He ducked. Doomfire singed hair. Up on scaffold a new figure emerged. Tall silhouette draped in tattered dragonlord cloak. Mask of cracked porcelain fused to flesh. In gaunt hands it held final key, darker than the rest. With theatrical flourish, it slid the key into top socket. The spindle roared, drawing magma in pillars. Vibrations hammered Jon's ribs. Pulse shot outward. Jon felt hinges seize. In Winterfell, alley staggered. Leaves shed crimson snow. At Eerie Shara clutched sky key as mountains shuddered. At Tide hinge Padre cried out in bubbles, current reversing. Jon roared, pivoting toward scaffold. But serpent coiled, blocking path. Eyes burned jade fury. Jon summoned flame root. Molten arcs enveloped blade. He cleaved low, severing serpent tail. It crashed, polluting air with shards. Jon vaulted wreckage, sprinted up obsidian steps 2 at time. Arya ascended opposite side. She hurled a dagger. It nicked masked Overseer's forearm, drawing blood black as tar. Overseer ignored, turning key further. Lines of code etched on spindle, ignited violet. Mere mortals, it rasped. Your weave stole our dominion. We take it back. Arya reached platform, clashed dagger to keyshaft, sparks dancing. Overseer backhanded her with impossible strength. She flew into railing, breath whooshing. Jon met Overseer mid-step. Swords collided, star iron against Valyrian steel glass hybrid. The impact rang like cathedral bell. Spindle energy gusted, tearing chunks from scaffold. Beneath, magma geysered, droplets cooling mid-air into obsidian rain. Cultists died screaming. The serpent spasmed, tail stumps spewing emerald. Ghost dragged Arya from falling plank. She rolled, regained feet, eyes blazing. Jon pressed assault. For every parry, Overseer's blade wept doomfire sparks that scored plate. Jon's circle burned hotter. He shoved inward, Longclaw biting mask's edge, cracking porcelain. Overseer hissed, free hand clawing toward Jon's circlet, trying to tear hinge mark loose. Arya leapt on Overseer's back, shadow key flaring pitch black. She plunged it between shoulder blades. Black-green ichor spurted, sizzling on wood. Overseer screamed, releasing Jon. Arya wrenched key downward, splitting ribcage. Blade drank doomfire, nullifying pulse for heartbeat. Jon sighted moment. He slammed Longclaw into socketed key, shattering it. The spindle stuttered. Sparks died. A thunderous backlash rippled, severing false weave. Overseer convulsed. Magma spout shot vertical, swallowing its body. Arya leapt aside, hair singeing. Scaffold sagged then collapsed, dumping Jon and Arya onto ledge below. They landed bruised, but breathing. In silence that followed, magma settled, its glow mellowing. The serpent lay broken, eyes glassy. The fake keys smoked on stone. Jon felt hinge discord recede. Frost, sky, flame, tide, gate realigned. Relief rushed through him. Chased by fatigue. Arya spat ash, grinning through soot. False gods fall quick. Ghost trotted down. Sniffed serpent corpse. Sneezed. Shiver nudged Arya's leg, whining. Jon knelt, feeling circlet cool. Let's gather the shards, he said. Embry will want proof. They pried remaining fake keys from wreckage. Arya found a vault chest half melted to floor, inside a bundle of parchments inscribed with hinge diagrams overlaid by swirling sigils unknown. She tied the scrolls, eyes narrowing. We burn nothing until Alice sees. They climbed out by dawn. Valyrian ash clouds parted to reveal pink sunrise, the first color softer than slag in this land for centuries. As Rhaegal bore them sky high, Jon glimpsed fissures across smoking plain closing slowly. Magma retreating. On flight north, Arya slept against his shoulder. Ghost curled at their backs like old pup. Jon watched Horizon, weighed what they'd found. Someone, or something, desired the power of hinges yet understood only copies. But copies could destabilize original spell. Another assault might come, subtler. By eve they reached Winterfell. Elise awaited beneath Hearttree, whose leaves glimmered healthy. She sank to knees when they laid fake keys and scrolls before her. She read symbols, eyes widening. These characters, they're fragments of pre-Valyrian star tongue. Whoever wrote them walks worlds between. Nesim show. Jon shared Serpent's last words. Aes's face paled. Unraveler. In children's tales it's the godling who unthreads fate, older than others, older than first light. Arya shrugged. We just skewered its priest. Alis shook head. One priest maybe, but we see the horizon of a larger loom. Her gaze moved to Bran's vine-shrouded form. He sleeps deeper now. Roots shield him from outer echoes, but they echo still. Lindamandero. That night a convocation met. Sansa from south by Raven's Back. Shara via sky mirror, Padrake shimmering in water basin. Daenerys appearing via glass candle. They debated till moon's zenith. Conclusion came grim but resolute. A circle must journey beyond world's edge, where star tongue thrums loud. They would seek knowledge, not war. Learn why unravelers sought to break what hinges preserved. Jon volunteered despite age. Arya insisted. Daenerys pledged dragon wing. Padrake offered tide path to carry them beyond sunset. Sansa agreed, though dread dimmed her smile. Write me each month, for kingdom's trust light you bear. Aes remained steward of weave, root key guiding. 3 weeks later, at Port of Mirrors, a new vessel prepared. Hull grown from living coral, reinforced by star iron. Sails woven of silk and glass threads. Prow carved into wolf-dragon fusion. Padrake chanted whale songs to calm currents. Drogon and Rhaegal perched, mast tops. Jon stood on deck, wind teasing silver hair. Arya tightened leather bracer, shadow key sheath at spine. Daenerys clasped his hand. We sail past the map, she said. He nodded. To keep maps whole. Banners snapped, Deerwolf intertwined with spiral shoot leaves and wave crescents. As sun dipped, tide hinge opened. A shimmering corridor of green-blue light stretching beyond horizon. The ship glided forward, dragons gliding overhead, wolves howling farewell on shore, and behind them 5 hinges pulsed in firm cadence beneath Alice Karstark's watchful heart. No chronicler would mark where they vanished. No chart yet plotted the realms awaiting. But root, flame, frost, sky, and tide thrummed in unity, trusting those who voyaged to safeguard the weave. And in stillness at Nightfort, Hodor and Bran stood sentinel, vines whispering blessings into endless north wind, reminding all creation that doors held not by stone alone, but by courage continually renewed.